Feeling the pinch in your wallet lately? With the AI boom, the global memory market is facing a massive shortage, sending prices skyrocketing. To tackle this crisis, Micron, already Taiwan's largest foreign investor, doubled down by buying Powerchip's Tongluo plant in Miaoli to solidify its position as the world's number 3. How did Micron grow from a small startup in a basement to a rival that even Samsung and SK Hynix fear? And how did Taiwan's manufacturing prowess become Micron's ace in the hole for AI? The memory industry has been on a roller coaster for decades. Either prices crash due to lack of demand, or they skyrocket from panic buying. Just like the 2018 Bitcoin mining craze, demand for computer memory exploded, doubling prices instantly. This price hike isn't because of standard DRAM demand, but because production capacity has been diverted to the hottest product, HBM. Simply put, HBM is ultra-high bandwidth DRAM. It stacks DRAM layers and connects them vertically, causing data transmission to explode. Even top-tier AI chips need it for maximum performance. But there's a catch. Producing one HBM chip consumes 3 times the wafer area of standard DRAM. The big 3 memory makers shifted DRAM capacity to HBM to meet AI demand, leaving less supply for PCs and driving prices up. In the brutal memory market, every industry-wide earthquake leads to a massive reshuffle. Historically, many companies couldn't survive and were weeded out, while others not only survived but seized the opportunity to grow. That is what we are. When talking about memory shortages and price hikes, the 1988 crisis was an absolute disaster. At the time, the price of a 1 megabyte DRAM chip soared from $199 to $550 in a single month. US computer giants panicked, and even Apple was forced to raise Macintosh prices, which crippled sales. And the one who caused this disaster was none other than the US government itself. Why, you ask? DRAM was actually invented by IBM scientists in 1966, so the early market was dominated by US firms. Even Intel, the future CPU giant, was selling DRAM back then, and Micron was founded in 1978 to ride this wave. But in the 80s, an organization called JEDEC set unified standards for DRAM. Once the specs matched, every chip was essentially the same, meaning whoever sold the cheapest became the boss. So, with the unlimited support of the government and banks, Japan frantically built factories, flooding the market with DRAM and drowning American rivals with prices near cost. The US started with several memory companies, but all had died off except for Texas Instruments and a then small startup called Micron. Micron figured if they couldn't beat them in capacity, why not beat them in court? They went to the government to complain and submitted piles of evidence regarding Japan's predatory pricing. Seeing their own child being beaten to death, the US government stepped in, forcing Japan to sign the US-Japan Semiconductor Agreement in 1986, which banned Japanese firms from aggressive low-price tactics. Little did they know, 2 years later Intel launched the budget-friendly 386 processor, triggering a massive PC market boom, with giants like IBM and Apple scrambling for DRAM. Now, the agreement had tied the hands of Japanese firms, keeping them from increasing production for fear of US sanctions. As for Micron, they had been pushed to the brink of bankruptcy by Japan and lacked the funds to build new plants, so even at full capacity, they couldn't meet the demand. With both sides unable to keep up, DRAM prices skyrocketed. Korea's Samsung and a group of Taiwanese firms, unaffected by the agreement, suddenly found an opportunity to fill the gap. Companies like UMC and Winbond rushed into the DRAM market, and Acer, a victim of rising prices, had its chairman, Stan Shi, decide to establish TI Acer in a joint venture with Texas Instruments. Just like that, the global DRAM market was no longer just a standoff between the US and Japan. It entered a brand new era of four-way competition. Soon, Samsung's ambition became clear. They wanted to flip the table and become the undisputed ruler of the memory market, and no one dared to argue. In 1993, when the global DRAM market was sluggish and all competitors were cutting spending, Samsung went the other way, betting everything on building the world's first 8-inch wafer production line. For the same wafer, an 8-inch wafer yields about 80% more chips than a 6-inch one, effectively cutting the cost per DRAM chip in half. By 1995, when Windows 95 ignited a global PC upgrade wave, Samsung swept the market with cheaper, higher-spec DRAM. Meanwhile, Japan was crippled by its own economic bubble, making them afraid to spend heavily on upgrading to 8-inch plants. This hesitation caused the market share of Japanese firms to plummet from a peak of nearly 80% to less than 30% by the end of the 90s. Micron, the protagonist of this story, is known for a high-stakes business model but excels at picking up bargains when the market hits rock bottom. In 1998, they acquired Texas Instruments' memory division for less than $1 billion, doubling their production capacity at the lowest possible cost. In the memory wars, Micron may never have dominated, but they were never counted out either. With the support of the semiconductor industry, Taiwan was the only player truly capable of challenging Samsung in production capacity. After obtaining licenses from foreign giants, companies like Nanya and Winbond began aggressively building plants, scaling from 8-inch to even more expensive 12-inch wafer fabs starting in 1991. By 2008, Taiwan's global market share soared to a historic peak of 29.6%. This gave the industry leader, Samsung, a cold sweat, forcing them to unleash their ultimate weapon, the kill plan, which eventually led to the collapse of Taiwan's DRAM manufacturers. Just as Samsung prepared to pop the champagne, Micron, which had been waiting on the sidelines to pick up the pieces, seized the opportunity to strike. In 2008, Micron spent $13 billion to acquire key stakes in Inotera, a joint venture with Nanya, from the bankrupt German firm Commanda, then bought all of Japan's Elpida's assets for $75 billion in 2012, along with its Rexchip joint venture. By 2016, Micron spent another $130 billion to fully acquire Inotera. Through these moves, Micron underwent a massive transformation, with its market share jumping from 12% to over 20%. Even better, Micron avoided the cost of building its own fabs. Taiwan's Inotera and Rexchip became Micron's Taoyuan and Taichung plants, contributing 60% of their total capacity. Profiting immensely, Micron used Taiwan as its manufacturing base to share the market with South Korea's Samsung and SK Hynix, ending 30 years of chaotic struggle and ushering in a three-way standoff. Micron had barely settled into the number 3 spot when they faced new challenges and opportunities, the AI-driven HBM wave. HBM, a fast and complex stacked high-end memory, is used in top-tier AI chips, meaning the old strategy of pricing out competitors no longer works in the HBM era. The current race is about whose technology is more mature and can pass NVIDIA's rigorous certification. The frontrunner isn't the industry leader Samsung, but SK Hynix, which seized the opportunity first. When ChatGPT emerged in late 2022, NVIDIA's most powerful AI chip at the time, the A100, almost exclusively used HBM3 produced by SK Hynix. This pushed SK Hynix's global HBM market share past 53% in 2023, and its stock price doubled accordingly. At this point, Micron couldn't sit still. While Samsung was still stuck on yield and heat dissipation issues, waiting for NVIDIA's nod, Micron decided to go all in and abandon the already lagging HBM3. They went all out to develop the next generation HBM3E, because they realized the reason for SK Hynix's dominance wasn't a big secret. They had hitched their wagon to the right partner by teaming up with TSMC. You have to realize that the core GPU in NVIDIA's AI chips is manufactured by TSMC, which then uses its CoWoS advanced packaging technology to precisely place the GPU and HBM on the same interposer. This means that if a manufacturer's HBM cannot integrate with TSMC's CoWoS, it is very difficult to pass NVIDIA's certification. SK Hynix had been figuring out how to coordinate with TSMC's CoWoS since 2013, so by the HBM3 generation, the two sides were finally deeply intertwined. Micron saw this clearly. In 2022, when TSMC established the 3D Fabric Alliance to standardize its CoWoS packaging specifications, Micron joined alongside SK Hynix without hesitation. Micron's logic was simple. Sticking with TSMC is never wrong, and don't forget that Micron also has a strong local advantage in Taiwan. Beyond the facilities acquired from Rexchip and Inotera, Micron has been aggressively upgrading in recent years, such as the Taichung A3 plant opened in 2021, which specializes in producing advanced HBM wafers, and the adjacent Taichung site opened in 2023 for back-end packaging and testing. With this layout, Micron can achieve end-to-end operations in Taiwan, handling everything from HBM production to packaging in-house. Even more impressive is that near Micron's Taichung plants are TSMC's CoWoS advanced packaging facilities in central Taiwan Science Park and Zhunan. As soon as Micron's HBM3E is ready, it can be shipped directly to TSMC to complete the final mile. This tightly integrated supply chain allows Micron to react much faster in this AI war than its rivals based far away in South Korea. Just like that, Micron not only successfully passed NVIDIA's certification but also announced the mass production of its HBM3E in February 2024, a timeline even earlier than that of SK Hynix. This golden ticket from NVIDIA allowed Micron's HBM market share to soar to 21% in one fell swoop, fiercely outpacing Samsung, who was still stuck in the mud at the time, and completely shattering its fate as the eternal underdog to become a formidable player that makes its Korean rivals tremble on the AI battlefield. Unfortunately, not long after, the relentless Samsung caught up, with their HBM3E and HBM4 successively passing NVIDIA's certification. No one expected that Micron would commit a fatal error at this critical moment. Simply put, the biggest change in HBM is that the bottom logic die must become a brain capable of processing massive amounts of data. SK Hynix was smart enough to go directly to TSMC for help, but Micron was too stubborn at first, trying to make do with their own memory technology, which resulted in severe overheating and reports that they might fail NVIDIA's verification. Seeing that they were about to lose their edge, Micron decided to stop being stubborn and handed the base logic die of their next-gen HBM4E directly to TSMC for foundry production. With the technical issues resolved, there was still a more thorny capacity crisis. A shortage is set to erupt in 2025, potentially lasting all the way until 2030. Although Micron has construction plans back home in the US, they won't be online until 2027 or 2030 at the earliest, which, for Micron trying to grab AI dividends, is like trying to put out a fire with water from far away. That's when Micron immediately thought of their old teammate, Taiwan. Already the largest foreign investor in Taiwan, Micron splashed out nearly $57 billion to lightning acquire a UO's Miaoli Tongluo plant, making a major move to secure future HBM capacity to continue battling the two Korean giants to the end. Looking at the story so far, we can see that Micron and Taiwan are truly the best partners for mutual benefit and a win-win outcome. Micron relied on Taiwan to gain ready-made factories, talent, and the semiconductor ecosystem centered around TSMC, while Taiwan used Micron to break into the HBM supply chain, making its own AI manufacturing landscape more complete. So while many thought Taiwan's memory industry was wiped out back when Samsung implemented its elimination plan, in reality, Taiwan simply found another way to survive, and survived even stronger. This history also tells us that you don't necessarily have to be the star under the spotlight to win. By leveraging its own manufacturing prowess and industrial ecosystem, Taiwan has instead become the backbone for these AI giants.